Imagine waking up in a world where what you loved the most simply vanished. No warning, no preparation, just emptiness. That's exactly how Luisa felt. In a single moment, the ground was pulled from beneath her feet. The smile that once lit up her days faded away, and what was left was darkness. Now, imagine living every second with that crushing pain, like a shadow that follows you everywhere, slowly suffocating you. She tried to run, she tried to hide. But how do you hide from something that lives inside you? The days passed endlessly, the nights even longer. Everything seemed lost, colorless, hopeless. Luisa wondered, how do you keep going when the pain is so great that it feels like it steals the very air you breathe? And it's in that exact moment, when everything seems to be falling apart, that true transformation happens. Each day, the weight on Luisa's chest seemed heavier. Life outside continued, but for her, time had stopped. Friends tried to help, but the words felt empty. Nothing seemed to break the wall of silence she had built around herself. And so she isolated herself. She looked at the photos, the memories of happy moments, and all she could feel was a burning pain. It was as if the future had disappeared, and the only thing left was constant suffering. She no longer knew what joy was. She no longer knew what hope was. But something changed. Sometimes life finds mysterious ways to reach us when we least expect it. One day, almost without realizing it, Luisa received a message, a simple conversation with someone she barely knew. A small gesture, almost insignificant, but it was enough to spark a little flame. And in that moment, Luisa realized something that would change everything. She was still here, and as long as she was here, she could fight. The pain, it was still there. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a choice before her, and she chose to live. It was the beginning of something new. It wasn't a big leap, it was just one step. But on that day, Luisa took the first step away from the darkness. And sometimes all we need is one first step. But Luisa's journey was far from easy. The first step, it seemed small, almost insignificant in the face of the vast pain she carried. But day by day she began to realize something. True strength isn't found in great leaps, but in persistence with each small movement. She would wake up, and for a moment the sadness still enveloped her like a cloud. But now there was a difference. A flame that, though fragile, remained lit. Each day brought new challenges. Moments when the urge to give up was strong, when the darkness seemed to want to overwhelm her again. But instead of yielding, Luisa looked ahead and took another step. Things around her started to change, almost imperceptibly. Small gestures, small advances. The pain was still there, yes, but something new was being born alongside it, the determination not to be defined by that pain. And then, something even more powerful began to happen. Those who once seemed distant, her family, started to come closer. They had always been there, but now Luisa saw them differently. They became her foundation, her solid base in the midst of the storm. And together, step by step, they helped her find her way. Luisa was no longer alone. She still fell, stumbled, but now she knew there were hands ready to lift her. And with that certainty, each day became a little clearer, a little brighter. She didn't know exactly when it happened, but at some point in the journey, the pain that once broke her transformed. Now that pain was her strength. It was what kept her fighting. Because Luisa had discovered something precious. Rebirth isn't about erasing the past, it's about using it as fuel to create an even stronger future. But Luisa's true transformation happened in an unexpected moment. After so many days of struggle, she found herself sitting at the table with her family. The sound of conversations flowed around her, but her mind still wandered through the darkness she was trying to leave behind. It was then that her mother, with a calm voice and eyes full of tenderness, broke the silence. "Luisa, do you still remember who you were before all of this? Before the pain?" Luisa hesitated, her throat tightened, and the words seemed trapped. She lowered her head, feeling the weight of the question. How could she remember? All she felt now was the pain that had become her constant companion. But before she could respond, her mother took her hand. You are still that person, my love, strong, brave, and full of life. Don't let this pain erase who you truly are. Those words echoed inside her. Something changed. It was as if, for the first time, she was seeing her reflection through the eyes of those who loved her. Luisa began to realize that her story wasn't over yet, and it was in that moment that she made a choice. She looked into her mother's eyes with tears of emotion and said, I won't let that happen, Mom. I'll fight. I'll fight for me, for us. And now I ask you, how many times have you felt like Luisa, trapped in a darkness that seemed never-ending? And how many times have you forgotten the strength that exists within you? If you've ever gone through moments like that, or if you know someone facing that battle now, share it in the comments. Your story could be the spark someone needs to keep fighting. Remember, sometimes it all starts with a simple step, a choice, or a word of support. From that day on, something in Luisa began to change deeply. It wasn't immediate, it wasn't easy, but every small victory, every morning when she chose to get up, brought her closer to who she truly was. She began to realize that pain didn't have the power to define her unless she allowed it to. One day, while walking through the park, Luisa found herself surrounded by people living their lives, laughing, talking, as if the world continued its natural rhythm. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel disconnected. She felt something new, something that once seemed distant: hope. She found a bench under the shade of a tree, and while watching the movement around her, her younger brother approached. He sat beside her in silence, sharing that moment. After a few minutes, he broke the silence. Luisa, I've never told you this, but you're my biggest inspiration. Watching you get up day after day gives me strength too. Luisa, surprised, turned to him with eyes full of emotion. She didn't know that her silent struggle was impacting the people around her. Me? She asked in a soft voice. He smiled and nodded. Yes, you. And I know that if you can go through all this and still stand, then I can overcome my own challenges too. Those words penetrated deeply into Luisa's heart. She had always thought that her pain was a burden she carried alone. But now she understood that her resilience was creating an impact beyond what she could imagine. In that moment, she realized that her recovery journey wasn't just about her. It was about everyone around her. How many times have you underestimated the power of your struggle? How many people around you are being impacted by your strength, even if you don't realize it? Luisa's journey reminds us that, even in our darkest moments, we are capable of inspiring those we love. Now it's your turn to reflect. Think about who you might be inspiring with your own story. And if that person is near you, tell them how much their strength means. You never know how far your words can reach. Everything seemed to finally be falling into place. Luisa had found strength in her family, hope in small moments, and resilience in every new step she took. But as life often does, it doesn't always follow the plan we've drawn. It was a quiet afternoon when Luisa received a phone call. On the other end of the line, a familiar voice but filled with concern. Luisa, I need you to come quickly. It's Dad. Her heart raced. Without thinking twice, she rushed to the hospital. Upon arriving, the shock was inevitable. Her father, who had always been a pillar of strength in her life, was gravely ill. The man who had always given her confidence and security now seemed fragile, almost unrecognizable. Luisa felt the ground disappear again, as if the world was collapsing once more. As she sat beside the hospital bed, holding her father's hand, that feeling of helplessness returned with full force. She thought, how is this happening now, just as I was beginning to rebuild myself? But then something unexpected happened. Her father, with a weak voice, squeezed her hand and said something Luisa never expected to hear. "Daughter, I'm proud of you." She looked at him, surprised. "Dad, how can you be proud of me? I'm struggling just to stay on my feet." And that's when the real turning point happened. He continued, with a soft smile on his lips. "You think I didn't see? I saw you rise up. I saw you face the darkness. Even in the midst of your pain, you brought light to our family. Your strength gave me strength too." Tears began to roll down Luisa's face. She had always seen her father as the rock, but now, in that fragile moment, she discovered that he too had been silently inspired by her. And that's where life surprises us. When we think we are the ones who need help, sometimes we discover that our silent struggle is strengthening those we love. How many times have you thought you were alone in your pain, when in fact you were giving strength to someone who was watching from afar? The turning point in Luisa's story wasn't just her father's illness. It was the discovery that even in the toughest moments, her journey was intertwined with that of her family. Her strength, her resilience, all of it was taking root in the hearts of those who loved her. And you? Are you ready to discover that your struggle could be the light in someone's life? Leave a comment. Who do you think is being inspired by you, even if silently? From that moment in the hospital, something changed profoundly in Luisa. That unexpected revelation from her father ignited a flame inside her that she didn't know existed. He, who had always been her pillar, now needed her. And somehow, that gave Luisa a new purpose, a new mission. The days in the hospital were long, the nights full of uncertainty. But instead of sinking again into fear and pain, Luisa decided to do something different. She refused to be consumed by the circumstances. Now, she was fighting not just for herself, but also for her father, for her family. Every day was a battle, but this time she wasn't just surviving, she was leading. By the hospital bed, Luisa became the rock she had always seen in her father. She held his hand, told stories of her childhood, shared memories that made them smile, even in the midst of the pain. And in moments of silence, when uncertainty tried to return, she reminded herself of something important. True strength isn't in never falling. It's in always getting back up. "I never knew I had so much strength," she whispered to herself one night as she watched her father sleep. But in reality, that strength had always been there, hidden perhaps, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And now, she wasn't just a survivor of pain, she was a fighter, a leader. And what once seemed like the end was now just the beginning of a new journey. And I ask you, how many times have you underestimated your own strength? How many times have you thought you couldn't go on, but still, step by step, you continued? Perhaps like Luisa, you are about to discover that your true strength only shows up when you need it the most. Luisa's story reminds us that even in the hardest situations, we can find purpose, we can find power. Today's struggle can turn into tomorrow's victory, but only if you keep fighting. And now I want to know, what is your struggle? Share it in the comments and inspire others with your story of strength. Luisa's journey, which began with loss and pain, transformed into a story of resilience and rebirth. What once seemed like the end became the beginning of a new version of herself. She learned that even when life knocks us down, we have within us the ability to get back up and to become even stronger than before. In time, Luisa's father began to recover, and that hospital, which once seemed like a place of uncertainty and fear, became a symbol of overcoming for them. Together, they faced the storm, and together they emerged stronger. But Luisa's true triumph wasn't just over pain or circumstances. It was the discovery that she was much stronger than she had ever imagined. She understood that pain is an inevitable part of life, but also that how we choose to face it is up to us. And Luisa chose to fight. She chose to be reborn. And in doing so, she became not just an inspiration to herself, but to everyone around her. And now I want you to think about your own journey. What challenges are you facing right now? How can you turn the pain you feel into strength? Remember, what you face today could become the foundation of your rebirth tomorrow. If Luisa's story touched you in any way, I invite you to share your own story in the comments. Your experience could be the light someone needs to keep fighting. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this. Leave a like if this message impacted you and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a video. We're in this journey of overcoming and growth together because we all have the power to rise, always. And remember, the struggle may be tough, but rebirth is always possible.